Who's moving the chessmen? What interests and motivate the actors behind each event? The board is deployed there. Critical move. Investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on TeleSUR.
En un mundo en constante movimiento, todos los días se generan nuevos sucesos y es necesario conocerlos. Nos preguntamos, ¿qué hay detrás de cada acontecimiento? ¿Cuáles son las consecuencias y cómo nos afectan? Ante estas preguntas, buscaremos poner el punto en la I.
Dot in the I. Saturday, only on TeleSUR.
In Colombia, 4 years after what became known as the Tandil massacre, the families of the victims and civil society organizations are demanding justice. Nearly 3 terabytes of data on the wealthy elite of over 200 countries and territories have been leaked in what has been termed the Pandora Papers. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was sworn in for a second 5-term year, vowing to defend Ethiopia's honor despite mounting global criticism over the war in the northern Tigray region. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your host, Gladys Quesada, and now we begin with the news in Colombia, where victims of state violence rallied in front of the Constitutional Court, demanding that the ordinary judicial system take over the investigation into the massacre that occurred 4 years ago in Tandil, Nariño department, which is under investigation by the military justice system. Impunity reigns regarding the crime, in which members of the Colombian army and the anti-narcotics police were allegedly implicated. We have more in the following report.
They requested that the Constitutional Court rule upon the jurisdiction challenge so that the investigation of the massacre in the village of El Tandil in Tumaco municipality, Nariño department, does not proceed in the military justice system and instead is handled by the ordinary judicial system, since those responsible for this event are police officers and members of the Colombian army.
The prosecutor office stated that it could not find any evidence to support the version of the security forces that it has been an attack by dissidents, rather than, in fact, the prosecutor office agreed with the version of the victims that it has been an indiscriminate attack on unarmed people. However, since the case was transferred to the military criminal justice system, we find ourselves in a deadlock.
With posters on the walls of the courthouse, protesters revealed what happened on October the 5th, 2017, when 1,500 farmers protested in the village of El Tandil against the forceful and violent crop eradication program carried out by the anti-narcotic police and the Colombian army. Some of the 600 armed men opened fire against the coca farmers, workers and members of the farmers' associations that were gathered there. Our intentions were to change the illicit crops for food, and I can't believe that in the midst of the peace process on trying to negotiate with the very government, we were shot at, killing 7 comrades, more than 20 wounded, leaving orphaned children, leaving single mothers, leaving a number of disabled. That's my case because I was shot twice in my left arm, and there was total displacement from that area. This was the first massacre after the peace agreements signed in 2016, which provided for the full substitution of illicit crops with sustainable productive projects. However, the government of Iván Duque did not heed the call of the farmers and their families, and continued with the violent crop eradication program attacking the weakest link in the production chain. Coca for us, they say it is an illicit crop, but for us it is not illicit, it is licit, because we subsist there thanks to coca. There are no schools, there is no health post, there are no roads, there is absolutely no help. So what is happening is that we want the government to comply with the peace agreements. Since 2016 to date, more than 210 massacres have been reported in Colombia, of which 75 have taken place so far this year. The most recent occurred in the municipality of Anori, department of Antioquia, on October the 2nd, where 4 people were killed, including a minor. To date, it is unknown which armed group is behind this violent incident.
TeleSUR, Bogotá, Colombia.
Now we continue. The Venezuelan government announced reopening of the border with Colombia as of Tuesday to allow for the resumption of binational trade under a strict protocol to prevent the spread of COVID-19. As part of the border reopening process, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez authorized the removal of the containers that had restricted access to the Simón Bolívar International Bridge that connects the two countries. The Vice President ratified the political will of the government to ensure the reopening benefits both nations, stressing the decision was made given the importance of trade between the two countries, estimated at more than $7 billion. She also highlighted that the Colombian government needs to control the activities of paramilitary groups, drug trafficking and criminal gangs which have affected border areas.
But in spite of this, in spite of what the planned violence
And we'll be right.
But in spite of this, in spite of what the planned violence against our homeland has met, President Nicolás Maduro, always thinking of our people, thinking in terms of brotherhood, the cooperation between the people of Colombia and the people of Venezuela, has made the decision to open the crossing to binational trade. This is very important news. Historically, the commercial exchange between Colombia and Venezuela has exceeded $7 billion. So this is a very direct message to the productive forces of Colombia, of Venezuela, to trade and binational actors.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away.
En un mundo en constante movimiento, todos los días se generan nuevos sucesos y es necesario conocerlos. Nos preguntamos, ¿qué hay detrás de cada acontecimiento? ¿Cuáles son las consecuencias y cómo nos afectan? Ante estas preguntas, buscaremos poner el punto en la I.
Dot in the I. Saturday, only on TeleSUR.
Welcome back to From the South. On Sunday, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalism revealed it had compiled and analyzed nearly 3 terabytes of data on the wealthy elite of over 200 countries and territories, compiled from 11.9 million records and 14 different offshore services firms.
The Pandora Papers include 330 politicians, 134 billionaires, celebrities, fraudsters, drug dealers, royal family members, leaders of religious groups around the world, and the alarming but not surprising figure of 35 current and former country leaders. Among them, the presidents of Ukraine, Kenya, and the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, as well as former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. A prior project, the Panama Papers, revealed similar information, but this time the data compiling goes back to the 1970s, and a large part comprehends 1996 to 2020 operations. According to the research team, the listed states and properties are not necessarily illegal, but its tax value was significantly downplayed to evade about $11.3 trillion in payments. The assets, from luxury items such as property and yachts, as well as incognito bank accounts, art ranging from looted Cambodian antiquities to paintings by Picasso and murals by Banksy, were hidden in tax havens listed like Panama, Dubai, Monaco, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands. Out of the 35 presidents involved in the matter, 14 are Latin American, as the list includes heads of states as Ecuador's Guillermo Lasso, Chile's Sebastián Piñera, and Dominican Republic's Luis Abinader. These inner workings reveal an under-the-shadows economy that controls the common. So maybe we should not say tax the rich, but justice for the poor.
Now we remain on topic. Latin American presidents and former heads of state have already issued statements seeking to disassociate themselves from the revelations of the Pandora Papers that link to their personal and family finances. The Chilean government issued a communique stating that the investigation into the sale of the Dominga mining company found no crime had been committed and that President Sebastián Piñera never participated in the operation. Meanwhile, the government of the Dominican Republic emphasized that President Luis Abinader has been transparent before his country and recalled that in his sworn statement of assets, he includes his family's offshore companies, which are managed under a trust. Ecuador's President Guillermo Lasso argued that he had not only collaborated with the investigation, but that he has also complied with his tax obligations in Ecuador. And former President of Colombia, Cesar Gaviria, admitted that he did have a stake in an offshore company in Panama, which has been declared to the National Tax and Customs Department in accordance with the requirements of Colombian law. Brazil's Finance Minister Paulo Guedes is one of the names featured in the Pandora Papers, which show he is personally benefiting from the policies he is implementing in the country. Our correspondent Brian Muir has the details.
Brazil's Finance Minister Paulo Guedes is one of the original Chicago boys. He studied under neoliberal guru Milton Friedman at University of Chicago in the 1970s and is considered to be one of the most mediocre of his students. He was never able to publish his dissertation, even in Portuguese. Since he's taken office, he's continued the deep austerity measures that started after the 2016 coup, and he's implemented policies that have weakened the Brazilian real against the dollar. Now it's come out in the Pandora's Papers that he's benefiting personally from these policies because he's got millions of dollars in holdings in the British Virgin Islands in a company that he created in 2014. He didn't declare his assets when he took office, and there's records that on a single day 2 years ago he deposited $9.55 million into this account. So as long as the Brazilian real keeps going down, his assets continue to increase. This has got a lot of Brazilian people calling for his resignation. Meanwhile, the Brazilian hegemonic media is buffering him from the crisis. They're just talking about Shakira and Tony Blair and some of the celebrities that have been tied up in Pandora Papers, but they're not mentioning Paulo Guedes, showing once again that Brazilian elites may be upset with Jair Bolsonaro, but they want to continue the deep austerity cuts. They want to continue privatizing Brazil's assets at pennies on the dollar to international capital interests. In the meantime, Paulo Guedes is coming under investigation. The opposition in Congress is starting an investigation into conflict of interest related to his offshore holdings in the British Virgin Islands.
Thank you, Brian, for this report. Now we move on. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has welcomed the revelations stemming from the Pandora Papers leak, which include data on more than 3,000 Mexicans who allegedly hid assets in tax havens to evade taxes.
transparent, and that the relevant authorities will act if there are crimes to be prosecuted. The origin of the money should also be clarified, because there are businessmen, politicians, legislators from Mexico and all over the world.
In the wake of the Pandora Papers revelations, the European Union chief has said the bloc must do more to combat tax evasion and aggressive tax planning. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on Monday condemned the practices brought to light in the huge data leak, which detailed how 35 current and former world leaders have used offshore tax havens to stash assets worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She said the practice was unacceptable, while at the same time claiming that the European Union has some of the highest tax transparency standards in the world. The revelations are embarrassing for leaders who have pushed austerity measures or campaigned against corruption. Among those featuring in the leaked papers is former EU Commissioner and Maltese Minister John Dalli, accused of failing to declare a secret offshore company while a member of Parliament. Dalli resigned as EU Health Commissioner in 2012 over a bribery scandal.
Crimes to be prosecuted.
Minister of Finland and President of the European Commission. And the subject of this press conference is Finland's recovery and resilience.
Iltalehti, good afternoon. One question to the President of the European Commission. Is it possible that the recovery and resilience plan or a similar program will be re-implemented in the future?
Prime Minister of Finland and President of the European Commission. And the subject of this press conference is Finland's recovery and resilience.
Iltalehti, good afternoon. One question to the President of the European Commission. Is it possible that the recovery and resilience plan or a similar program will be re-implemented in the future?
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us.
We share your feelings, exalt your accomplishments, and show your reality. Our approach is global and keeps us in tune with the peoples. Caribbean countries also get our signal. With enthusiasm, we will continue to broadcast for them. Because we are TeleSUR, the news broadcaster from South America and the Caribbean. It is our duty to reverse the damage we cause to the planet. Let's recover our natural ecosystems with actions in defense of the environment. Let's keep fighting for a greener world. Wednesdays, only on TeleSUR.
Welcome back. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was sworn in for a second 5-year term on Monday, vowing to stand strong and defend Ethiopia's honor despite mounting global criticism over the war in the northern Tigray region. Abiy's Prosperity Party scored a landslide win in June elections, which came despite the ongoing conflict in Tigray, with allegations of human rights abuses, tens of thousands killed, and hundreds of thousands facing famine-like conditions, according to the United Nations. The fighting was spread to the neighboring Afar and Amhara regions, while Tigray has fallen under what the UN describes as the de facto humanitarian blockade. It is unclear whether Abiy's swearing-in will alter the course of the war between government troops and the Tigray's People Liberation Front, which dominated the national politics before he took power. Abiy's office has said certain conciliatory measures, such as declassifying the front as a terrorist group, could only happen after a new government was formed. A United Nations investigation published on Monday stated that war crimes and crimes against humanity have been committed in Libya since 2016. In June 2020, the UN Human Rights Council adopted a resolution calling for a fact-finding mission to be sent to Libya. The experts were charged with investigating alleged violations and abuses of international human rights and humanitarian law since 2016. Despite the release of the report on Monday, citing widespread abuses by all parties to the conflict in the country, the mission experts said more time is needed to probe further allegations on the direct participation of children in hostilities. As well as documenting the recruitment of child soldiers, the report details the enforced disappearance and extrajudicial killings of prominent women. All rich Libya has been torn by conflict since the 2011 NATO-led invasion and the toppling and assassination of longtime leader Muammar Gaddafi, with rival groups vying for power.
Our investigations have established that all parties to the conflicts, including third state, foreign fighters and mercenaries, have violated international humanitarian law, in particular the principle of proportionality and distinction, and some have also committed war crime. Civilians paid a heavy price during the 2019-2020 hostilities in Tripoli, as well as during other armed confrontations in the country since 2016.
Meanwhile, people seeking to cross the Mediterranean Sea to Europe are subjected to a huge number of abuses in detention centers and at the hands of traffickers, according to the United Nations fact-finding mission in Libya. Despite reports of the abuses, the European Union continues to funnel millions of euros into Libya to get authorities there to prevent people reaching its shores.
Our investigations also indicated that migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees are subjected to a litany of abuses at sea, in detention centers, and at the hands of traffickers. Violations against migrants are committed on a widespread scale by state and non-state actors with a high level of organization and with encouragement of the state. All of this is suggestive of crimes against humanity. Our investigations also indicated that migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees are subjected to a litany of abuses at sea, in detention centers, and at the hands of traffickers. Violations against migrants are committed on a widespread scale by state and non-state actors with a high level of organization and with encouragement of the state. All of this is suggestive of crimes against humanity. Our investigation.
Now we address other topics. Authorities in the former capital of Senegal are immersed in a battle against the rising sea, which threatens to wash the city away. The city of St. Louis served as the capital of the French colony of Senegal until the capital moved to Dakar shortly before Senegal's independence in 1960. Its colorful, historic balconied houses and double-storied villas have helped make the island a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the city hosts a renowned annual jazz festival. But St. Louis stands only a few meters above the sea level, and climate change is already wreaking havoc. Excavators are currently ripping up its beach to lay giant blocks of basalt in a last-minute effort to keep the sea at bay. When the work is finished, a black sea wall will stretch for kilometers along the coastline. But the sea wall is a stopgap, and some are skeptical that the historic city can be saved at all.
This dam construction project came too late. There is no point in playing doctor after death. They waited for billions of CFA francs to be swallowed up by the sea before coming today to put these stones.
Life here is an ordeal. Our new lodgings are extremely hot and we live there with our whole family, as we have no choice. We have to stay here because our home was totally destroyed by the sea.
The aim is to gain at least 20 meters of coastline and thereby free up to 20 meters of houses, starting from the protective wall, and then to have 4 meters that will be reforested and left to the inhabitants for recreational activities, but which will not be inhabited.
The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres visited Barbados to address the 15th session of the UN Conference on Trade and Development, which begins this Monday, under the theme From Inequality and Vulnerability to Prosperity for All. The following video sums up his visit to the Caribbean island nation.
This visit is a visit of solidarity. And that solidarity is entirely justified because these countries, and Barbados in the first line, are the main victims of the inequality that prevails in the world. And here we see what Barbados is doing, protecting the coastline because of the rising sea waters. But of course, small countries, small island countries all around the world cannot do it without much more support. To build resilience, to prepare the land and the people for the devastating impact of climate change.
Had we not done this coastal protection, all of this land going back to the buildings behind would be literally being reclaimed now. Regrettably, we expect worse.
If the youth are the future, it is our duty to protect them as much as we can.
We need to include the future in the decisions that we take today.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.
We are approaching a new era. Technology trends and the massive deployment of new networks. It is just the beginning of what lies ahead in this new decade. Atomoon. Travelers of knowledge, the future is today.
Who's moving the chessmen? What interests motivate the actors behind each event? The board is deployed there. Critical Move investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on TeleSUR. Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali analyzes the international media influence driven by the empire, access and analysis of political, economic and social life throughout Latin America through our stream and website in English. A critical space committed to truth to determine the conjuncture that moved the world today. The world today. Mondays on TeleSUR.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. With a team of journalists in 25 locations around the world to convey our people's reality. From the South. Weekdays. Only on TeleSUR.
Deep gazes filled with struggles and stories. Struggles that transcend generation. Know the deepest realities through its protagonists on TeleSUR Documentaries. Sunday. Only on TeleSUR. It is our duty to reverse the damage we cause to the planet. Let's recover our natural ecosystems with actions in defense of the environment. Let's keep fighting for a greener world. Wednesdays, only on TeleSUR. Every year, thousands of people leave their homeland to reach new horizons. A reality of those people who struggle for their freedom. Know the diverse causes of those who live between borders. Thursdays, only on TeleSUR.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Sean todos muy bienvenidos a Vidas. Hay lugares donde el arte se unifica con el orgullo de los pueblos. Y esos lugares están llenos de colores, alegría, pasión, tradiciones, arraigo, valor y entrega.
Real Life. Fridays. Only on TeleSUR. It is our duty to reverse the damage we cause to the planet. Let's recover our natural ecosystems with actions in defense of the environment. Let's keep fighting for a greener world. Wednesdays, only on TeleSUR.
You're watching TeleSUR English. I'm Gladys Quesada, and these are the headlines at this hour. We begin in Colombia, where 4 years after what became known as the Tandil massacre, the families of the victims and the civil society organizations are demanding justice. Groups, including the National Movement of Victims of State Crime, are demanding that the Constitutional Court intervene to explain the causes of the slow and insufficient progress in the investigation of the massacre, which occurred on October 5, 2017. On that date, Colombian police allegedly assassinated at least 8 people and left at least 20 wounded in a massacre in the forest of El Tandil in Tumaco, a port city next to the Pacific Ocean. The victims, many of whom were coca planters, were protesting and called on the government to provide subsidies and guarantees to meet their basic needs in the face of the forced eradication of their coca crops. And in the wake of the Pandora Papers revelations, the European Union chief has said the bloc must do more to combat tax evasion and aggressive tax planning. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on Monday condemned the practices brought to light in the huge data leak, which detailed how 35 current and former war leaders have used offshore tax havens to stash assets worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She said the practice was unacceptable and said more work is needed, while at the same time claiming that the European Union has some of the highest tax transparency standards in the world. The revelations are embarrassing for leaders who have pushed austerity measures or campaign against corruption. Among those featuring in the leaked papers is former EU Commissioner and Maltese Minister John Daly, accused of failing to declare a secret offshore company while a member of the Parliament. Daly resigned as EU Health Commissioner in 2012 over a bribery scandal. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was sworn in for a second 5-year term on Monday, vowing to stand strong and defend Ethiopia's honor despite mounting global criticism over the war in the northern Tigray region. Abiy's Prosperity Party scored a landslide win in June elections, which came despite the ongoing conflict in Tigray, with allegations of human rights abuses, tens of thousands killed, and hundreds of thousands facing famine-like conditions, according to the United Nations. The fighting has spread to the neighboring Afar and Amhara regions, while Tigray has fallen under what the UN describes as the de facto humanitarian blockade. It is unclear whether Abiy's swearing-in will alter the course of the war between government troops and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, which dominated national politics before he took power. Abiy's office said had certain conciliatory measures, such as declassifying the front as a terrorist group, could only happen after a new government is formed. And those are the headlines at this hour. For this and more stories, go to our website at telesurenglish.net.
Hello, welcome to the critical move of TeleSUR. A General Court of the European Union declared the agreement signed between Morocco and the European Union in the field of agriculture and fisheries illegal. This is reason to the Polisario Front, which has defended since the ratification of the agreements that the European Union does not have the power to sign texts that affect the sovereignty of a third country. International observers of the conflict had already underlined how inappropriate these agreements promoted by the European Union were, since they have hindered the process of dialogue initiated between the Polisario Front and Morocco at the request of the United Nations. After the construction and development of fishing towns encouraged by the Moroccan government, human rights activists denounced at a time that the interest of modifying the demographic balance. Today, we wonder, what are the geopolitical implications of the decision of the General Court of the European Union regarding the recognition of the Polisario Front as a legal person? Is there any absence of sovereignty links between Morocco and Western Sahara? What scenarios are emerging from the court's decision? How does Europe persist in maintaining colonial relations of exploitation and plundering of natural resources in Africa, impoverishing its inhabitants and also closing the doors to migration? Let's deploy the board. We're just beginning. We will analyze all this. As early as December 2016, the court issued a crucially important ruling on the economic partnership agreement between the two cooperating parties, considering that this agreement cannot be implemented in the occupied territory of Western Sahara, as the Sahrawi territory has a status separate and distinct from that of the Kingdom of Morocco. Two judgments of the Court of Justice unfavorable to Morocco could lead Rabat to suspend relations with the European Union, ignoring the judgment of its own court. The European Union and Rabat have constantly sought to cut off, fabricating 1,000 excuses to continue to plundering of the natural resources of the Sahrawi people. Let's review more of this. First, Council Decision 2019-441 of March 2019 on the conclusion of the partnership agreement in the fields of sustainable fisheries between the European Union and the Kingdom of Morocco and its implementing protocol, as well as the exchange of letters accompanying the agreement, is cancelled. Now it is important what is the decision of the General Court of the European Union to cancel the fishing and agriculture agreements between the Community Bloc and Morocco for not having the approval of the Sahrawi people. The General Court of the European Union ordered last Wednesday, September 29th, to annul the agricultural and fishing trade agreements signed by Morocco and the Continental Bloc in response to an appeal lodged by the Polisario Front, the movement fighting for the independence of Western Sahara. The reason for the annulment is that the European Justice considered that the signing of the agreement did not take into account the consent of the Sahrawi people as the affected party. The ruling could damage the European Union's relationship with Morocco, although the court said the effects of the 2019 agreement would be maintained for a certain period to preserve the European Union's external action and legal certainty about its international commitments. The regional bloc is Morocco's main trading partner and the largest foreign investor in the North African Kingdom. The ruling was described as a great victory by the Polisario Front. The court issued two historic decisions for the Sahrawi cause by annulling these two trade agreements on agriculture and fisheries. Western Sahara is a region situated in the far west of the Sahrawi Desert and is one of the 16 non-self-governing territories under the supervision of the United Nations Decolonization Committee. The Polisario Front, an acronym for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Western Sahara and the Golden River, is the movement fighting to end what it calls an occupation by Morocco and to achieve self-determination for the Sahrawi people. Morocco, for its part, considers that vast territory, rich in minerals, as one of its southern provinces and rejects any action it considers a threat to its territorial integrity. The case of the fisheries and agricultural agreements was brought to court by the Polisario Front, which challenged the decisions of the European Council, the organism that acts on behalf of the member countries of the European Union. In its findings, the court determined that the Polisario Front was internationally recognized as the representatives of the people of Western Sahara, and that the European Union failed to ensure that it obtained the consent of the Sahrawi people before sealing the agreements with Morocco. The ruling comes just after the second governments of Spain and Morocco are trying to resolve the diplomatic crisis triggered by the sudden arrival of some 10,000 migrants, including accompanied minors, in the city of Ceuta, a Spanish port city in North Africa. In a joint statement, the regional bloc's top diplomat, Josep Borrell, and Morocco's foreign minister, Nasset Bourita, said they will take steps to ensure the legal framework that guarantees the continuation and stability of the trade relations. In 2018, the European Union Court of Justice had ruled that a fisheries agreement between the European Union and Morocco could not include the waters of Western Sahara. Now let's take our first break in our critical move. Remember, there is a strategic move in social media for you to participate. You can follow us on our Twitter accounts. The European Justice gives reason to the Polisario and orders the cessation of the fishing plundering by Morocco. Will a political solution for the Western Sahara based on the right of self-determination and international legality be possible? Leave your opinion. Let's take a short break. We'll be back soon with the analysis. It is important to remember where is this territory we focus our analysis today. Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, territory under dispute. We are talking about states recognized by at least 88 countries, located in Africa, especially on the shores of the Atlantic Ocean. To the north, it borders Morocco and Algeria, while to the east and part of the south, it borders Mauritania. It has a territorial area of 266,000 square kilometers. It is integrated by the former province of the Spanish Sahara, illegally annexed in 1976 by Morocco and Mauritania. After the Spanish decolonization was proclaimed, the area was occupied by Morocco in August 1979, when Mauritania abandoned the area it occupied. Morocco continues to control most of the territory it calls the southern provinces, and includes a portion east of the so-called Wolf Chain. The Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, for its part, controls the so-called Free Zone or liberated territories. The economy of Western Sahara is incipient. Most of its inhabitants subsist on fishing on the coastal bank, one of the richest in the world. There are mineral resources, such as various metals and oil in large deposits discovered and exploited by foreign companies in the area occupied by Morocco. As the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic can do nothing to prevent it, it tries to attract friendly companies to explore the liberated territories for exploitation. But the greatest wealth is concentrated in the abundant phosphate mines located in Bukra, Sagia al-Hamra region in the north of Western Sahara. Now, what objectives are hidden in the decrees passed by the Moroccan parliament on the territorial waters of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic? Let's find out. On January 22, 2020, the Moroccan parliament passed two laws delimiting the exclusive exploitation waters of the Maghreb country. Neither of the two regulations are valid, as they do not comply with the international law and are not endorsed by the United Nations. Although documents have created tensions with Spain by bordering on the extension of the exclusive economic zone on the Canary Islands, their obscure purpose seems to be to seize the waters of the Western Sahara. The border region has great oil potential. Morocco has therefore included the Western Sahara Sea within its territorial zone, which allows it to illegally exploit and manage its resources. As established by the United Nations, the sovereignty of the countries includes the first 12 nautical miles, equivalent to 22 kilometers, from its coast or territorial sea. It can then establish that exclusive zone from 12 to 200 miles, being the state of the art that only one that can manage, explore, conserve, and exploit them. The new Moroccan demarcation raises the perimeter of its territorial waters along the Western Sahara, a former Spanish colony whose sovereignty has been unresolved since the metropolis abandoned it in 1975 and left it at the mercy of others. In addition, Morocco delimits the 200 miles equivalent to 370 kilometers of its exclusive economic zone and incorporates the 350 miles or 648 kilometers of the continental shelf, also known as the bed and subsoil of the submarine areas. With this regulation, the continental shelves of the Canary Islands and Morocco converge. Both are disputing the tropic sea mount, located 500 kilometers southwest of the Iron Island. It is an ancient volcano which has the largest deposit of tellurium and a strategic mineral in the technological industry, with a potential content of 2,670 tons. The government of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic has made it clear that it will not tolerate the illegal exploitation of its natural resources, including fisheries, nor the efforts of the Moroccan companies or those of other countries to exploit the deposits located on the seabed to which it is rightfully entitled. Now let's start the analysis from Spain. Juan Luis González Pérez, international analyst. He knows very well the geopolitics issue. It is a pleasure to have you with us. Welcome. It is my pleasure to be here. It is good to have you back. So let's understand this issue because there are several edges. So we are talking about agreements registered in 2019, but the experts had pointed out that this was going to have consequences. The Polisario Front was not going to be quiet by just waiting the others to plunder its natural resources. We're talking about fisheries, natural resources. So in this context, I want to know your opinion, especially when this European court is recognizing the legal character of the Polisario Front, something that is essential for the Sahrawi people and its self-determination. What's your opinion? Well, I would define it like it's being a big blow for Morocco, which has lost the rights over that area, according to this sentence, and according to the international law, it's been a great victory for the Polisario Front. It is recognized as the only speaker of the Sahrawi people, and the European Union has received like a warning for not complying with the international law. Morocco is in a moment that they were actually kind of happy. The Moroccan kingdom, with the agreement signed with Trump, by normalizing the situation with Israel. But between the definition of Biden that is not taking any side, then it's a big blow for Morocco. And even more coming from the European court. And it has remembered Morocco that the international law exists. And it's like 5 rulings in the same regard. And the economic blow Morocco will receive for this is going to be small. So it will only be the products coming from the Sahrawi territory, or those that Spain pays to the European Union. It can be like 52 million a year. But it is not the same politically speaking, and Morocco will have to sign the agreement. And the European Union, if it takes seriously all this issue, then it ties the hand to Morocco. And of course, the recognition of the Polisario Front as the representative of the Sahrawi people will have connotations in the future. And of course, the rulings or the agreements are annulled because it says that it needs the consent of the Sahrawi people. And although it'll be easy to do it because the Polisario Front actually says they are willing to do it, but that will compel Morocco to recognize the Polisario Front, and they won't do it. So that's the game, and this blow is like a turning point. Juan Luis, it's actually very interesting what you say. Please stay with us. Let's add to the dialogue Khalid Mohamed Abdelaziz. He's a journalist in Spain, so it is a pleasure. Welcome. It is my pleasure to share with you this moment. So these treaties that the European Union, the court of the European Union has ruled out, do you think it is like saying that there is no sovereignty between Morocco and Western Sahara? What's your opinion? So, to have into account these rulings, which is a historic victory for the Polisario Front as a legal entity that represents the people of the Western Sahara, it makes clear that the territory of Western Sahara is a separate territory from Morocco. So, evidently, that refutes or contradicts the Moroccan arguments over its legitimacy about managing the territory of Western Sahara, but it also refutes the illegal declaration of Donald Trump recognizing the sovereignty of Morocco over the Western Sahara territory. Evidently, it is very clear the European Union will have to review its relations with Morocco in the trade area, and also regarding the Maghreb, because any agreement it will sign with Morocco, then the Western Sahara should be excluded unless the Polisario Front recognizes the agreement, or if it is involved in the agreement. And the United Nations supports a solution to the conflict of Western Sahara as long as the Sahrawi people accept its right to self-determination. Yes, Khalil. So, Juan Luis, what implications has this decision and how it will affect the Moroccan kingdom? Because there are other countries that are also affected by declaring illegal these treaties between Morocco and the European Union. One of them is Spain. Well, Spain would be the most affected country for the interruption of this agreement, because I think 70-something% of the boats that fish in the Sahrawi waters belong to us, and it's kind of a complementary. It is an Andalusian fleet. When there are they cannot fish in that area, they go to Sahara. And I think it will be the first affected country. But the annulment of the agreement regarding agricultural taxes has made very happy the farmers of Spain, because they're always talking about this loyal competition, that they do not have to follow the same rules of the European Union, and they have lost thousands of hectares of crops because they are not profitable. So Spain will be affected, but it is not something too serious. If they can measure out that agricultural production, so the one damaged the most will be Morocco, because the European Union will not continue like always of the pressure of Spain and France, because France has a lot of interest with Morocco. The pressure exerted by these two countries have allowed the European Union to not comply with the international law, and Spain is submitted by blackmail with Morocco, because Morocco has a key to migration to Europe. It has the control of jihadism to Europe, and it has a key from the drug trafficking to Spain. And of course, with the complicated situation with the energy issue, with the passage of the Algerian gas to Spain, and if that agreement is broken, that we will lose that gas, and it was bring about a rise in the prices of electric energy. So these two countries, especially Spain, is submitted to blackmail, and that's why Spain is against this ruling, and it will try to solve it. But the real affected will be Morocco, because Europe will have to bet by the United Nations, by the referendum self-determination, by respecting the rights of the Sahrawi people, and to stop vulnerating the international law. And this can lead the peace process to reignite. And we can talk about a self-determination referendum in a short period of time. So, Juan Luis, do you think it is possible to worsen the relations between Morocco and the European Union? Well, I think it is feasible to come into a new process of crisis, because Morocco, as we said it, could emerge again, and to have another migration crisis as the one we had. But Morocco is in a delicate economic situation. 3/4 of the imports of the exports of Morocco go to the European Union, and Morocco has always been very brave, breaking relations with specific countries. But when it tried to